All right, if you're a parent who's struggled to find childcare, you might want to listen up to this story.
Yeah, Indiana lawmakers right now are considering a bill that supporters say would provide more childcare in our state for parents who need it. Emily Longnecker tonight is here to explain how this bill would work.
Well, the work on this bill really started last summer in a summer study committee that found 4 out of 10 Hoosier kids live in a child care desert, meaning that there is no child care available. That not only affects them, but their parents' ability to work. When Maureen Weber picks up the phone at Early Learning Indiana, many times a parent is on the other end, asking for help.
Their frustration level is just incredibly high.
That's because Weber says the parent often can't find childcare, which means they can't get to work.
It's just a very urgent need for young families all across Indiana.
Thursday morning, Weber and more than a dozen others testified in support of Senate Bill 2, including the lawmaker who wrote it.
Lack of child care affects every part of our economy.
Supporting the child care workforce means supporting the rest of the economy. Without adequate staff, child care centers can't operate, which means fewer available workers in other sectors of the economy.
Senate Bill 2 allows more people to be eligible to work at a center by lowering the age requirement from 21 to 18. Child care employees also would have more access to federal and state money to pay for their own child care needs. Studies show the average child care employee in Indiana makes $12 an hour. Weber says Early Learning Indiana pays above that average, and still hiring and retaining employees is hard, which means they can serve fewer children.
Out of the 1,300 or so seats that we operate, we have several hundred that are currently closed off because we simply can't staff them with qualified staff.
Senate Bill 2 calls for studying how much child care employees in Indiana make. It would also set up 3 smaller child care centers in rural areas of the state where there's no access to child care. The proposed law would also make it easier for public and charter schools to be cleared to provide pre-K services on site. All of it say supporters a first step in growing the state's child care workforce.
It's not the silver bullet, but it definitely contains a number of really good things that will help first attract and retain workers, but also help the whole system process a little bit, function more efficiently.
Lawmakers who support this bill call this an infrastructure issue to Indiana and point to the fact that companies who are thinking about setting up shop here in this state, one of the first questions they have is the access to child care for their employees. Senate Bill 2 passed out of committee today unanimously.
People rallied at the Indiana Statehouse this afternoon to advocate for reproductive rights.
Our Angelica Robinson has more on why they'd like to see less restrictions.
A group of activists came together at the Indiana Statehouse, all in the name of women's reproductive rights. They say access to health care, birth control, and abortions play a key role in women's health.
So we know that the people of Indiana want this access, and they're not giving it a chance.
The rally comes after fallout over a controversial ruling by Alabama's Supreme Court. A judge ruled that frozen embryos are entitled to the same legal protections as a child, which could be a problem for families using IVF treatment. Now there's concern lawmakers in other states across the nation may try to follow suit.
States like Alabama and Texas, when they sneeze, the rest of us catch a flu. And so I think we'll see some of the same types of legislation, like fetal personhood, that they are trying to do.
Haley Boer of Indiana for Planned Parenthood believes many people in Indiana would not support that kind of legislation.
But it's a very slippery slope, and that legislation is dangerous. It is harmful to the people of Indiana, and it's not good legislation.
That's why they're speaking up now.
This session and the next session and the one after that will hold them accountable to ensure that we expand access to health care in Indiana.
In hopes that lawmakers in Indiana will keep the rights of women front of mind when considering reproductive laws. Indianapolis Right to Life declined our request for comment. Reporting in Indianapolis, Angelica Robinson, 13 News.
A controversial bill is awaiting Governor Holcomb's signature to become law.
It impacts civil lawsuits stemming from car accidents here in Indiana. Under the bill, juries on these cases would get to know whether the accident victim was wearing a seatbelt. Then the jury could use that information to reduce the damages owed, potentially.
So we've seen similar bills introduced over the years, but never one that got House and Senate approval. Under current Indiana law, juries are not allowed to ask about seatbelts, the argument being that it takes the focus off who's at fault for the accident.
Supporters, though, they say if injuries were worse because the victim wasn't wearing a seatbelt, well, that should be considered when deciding on damages. Right now, plenty of other bills are making their way through the State House. You can find our full coverage right now. We've got it at WTHR.com.
Have you ever driven your car around in circles, skidding while you did it? Just like in this video.
Well, a lot of people say this is doing donuts, right? Well, there's a bill in front of state lawmakers and it calls that practice spinning. And there's an effort right now to make it a crime.
13 News Statehouse reporter Emily Longnecker is here to explain more.
Yeah, this bill has already seen a lot of support from law enforcement, especially IMPD, who dealt with a lot of spinning incidents last summer that were all part of street takeovers that they saw across the city. Cars and trucks stopping and blocking traffic. Also, the people driving them and their passengers can use the street instead to drive around in circles.
These things are getting out of control, and IMPD frankly approached me and said we need help.
Republican State Senator Aaron Freeman thinks Senate Bill 240 is the way to do that. Under Freeman's bill, someone caught spinning for a second time would face prison time, lose their license, and have the vehicle they were spinning with taken away, even if that vehicle belonged to somebody else. Critics of the bill say taking a vehicle for a second spinning offense, especially if it belongs to someone else, goes too far.
Decided to do some more rotational.
Under the current law, that doesn't even happen if someone is caught driving under the influence for the second time in a vehicle that doesn't belong to them, if the vehicle's owner has no idea.
We got to keep this in perspective. This is a crime that outlaws doing donuts in a car. And the loss of a vehicle, especially if it's a vehicle that's been borrowed from another person, say a kid who borrows a vehicle from a parent or something like that, could be very detrimental.
Also under the bill, if police try and pull you over for spinning, the penalty for running from them in a vehicle and risking hurting or killing someone would carry the same penalty as when someone runs from police and actually does cause injury or death.
These are dangerous things. They're obviously create the substantial risk that we're going to either kill somebody or seriously injure them, and we shouldn't be doing it, period.
We're here in opposition.
Critics of SB 240 say the bill deals with spinning, which is just one part of street takeovers, not the bigger concern of street takeovers themselves.
A kid who's out doing donuts in the snow, who gets caught by a police officer. I would hope that a police officer would use their discretion not to put somebody in jail for that and not to potentially seize their car if they've been caught doing that before, but the law would allow it.
The bill's author says something needs to be done.
At some point, knucklehead action has to be dealt with, and this is crazy and very dangerous.
The bill did not get a vote in committee today. That is likely to happen on Monday. At the Indiana Statehouse, Emily Longnecker, 13 News.
Right now, Indiana is one signature away from reversing a longtime ban on happy hour.
This bill is now sitting on the governor's desk, and it's generated a lot of interest among business owners. Under current law right now, if businesses want to run drink specials, it has to be the same price all day. You can't have discounts at just certain times on certain days.
So state lawmakers brought forward a bill to undo that ban after tourism and restaurants advocated for it as a way to bounce back from the pandemic.
Bars took a hit, the industry took a hit. Now I think this will help get some of that back. I think it's good for the businesses. It's also good for the public because they're going to get a cheaper price, of course, but it's good for the businesses to be able to set that through certain hours.
Not being able to do happy hour kind of limits you, and slow times and bars being able to change the price of alcohol at different times throughout the day is going to be nothing but a good thing in my opinion.
So this bill does come with some stipulations. Specials have to be done by 9 p.m. They can't exceed a 4-hour window on any given day, and specials throughout the week cannot add up to more than 15 hours in a week. If the governor signs this bill, the new law would take effect July 1st.